It's difficult for fans to absorb the news like this, for someone that they love, that someone's been a big part of their lives as musicians and probably played a role in a lot of the experiences they've had. But you know the man. So
well, yeah,
what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely not one of his best pals, but, I'm definitely one of those people that grew up listening to his music. I remember my sister had the fully completely tape in the car, and getting in the car and her singing along with some of the songs on that tape, and me realizing that music can be cool, and how abstract music can be, and really just loving it. And as I got older and started playing music, I got to meet him a couple of times, and then he came to the Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Festival when I was booking it, and he came to the festival, and we hung out a lot backstage, and we spent some time together. And I was going through a kind of a rough time in my life, and I was having a real kind of crisis of confidence, and he took the time for no apparent reason to sit down and spend some time and talk to me through some things that I was going, and very complimentary and a very wonderful man. So when I heard the news, it was just absolutely devastating to hear. I mean, you just don't expect something like this to happen ever, especially to someone like Gord. But I think to so many people, it's less like someone like Prince or David Bowie, these people who seem very much larger than life. I think to a lot of Canadians and to a lot of Canadian music fans, there was Gord's humanity that made him so perfect to us. When you watch Gord on stage, you felt like you were watching the world's greatest bar band and the world's greatest.
It's so interesting because on the weekend before this news broke, I saw all these people tweeting out that, hey, spending a typical May 2-4, doing the thing Canadians do, listening to the hip.
Yeah, there was a kind of a working man sensibility about Gord Downie that you always felt, even though he was the greatest frontman, and I'll say this, the greatest frontman this country has ever produced. When you watched him perform, you felt like you were watching a friend perform. You felt like you were watching your local band perform, and the Tragical Hip in many ways felt like Canada's local band. So it's certainly devastating.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things I noticed was CBC Radio had this kind of guide thing on how to dance. It was like an infographic, how to dance like Gord Downie, because he was so unique on stage. He is so unique on stage, and will continue to be so unique. I mean, the way he moves, seems to have a sense of humor about himself.
Certainly a transcendence on stage. He had a certain. He was never incredibly obsessed with his image on stage. He would just let the music channel through him, and he would move and he would dance, and you felt like everything you saw of him and everything he said and everything he sang was a natural reaction to how he was feeling through his lyrics and through his movement. And it was a really transcendent performance whenever you got to watch him. He is, and I've said this for years, our greatest frontman.
Why does this band matter so much? What effect has it had on the music scene?
It's an interesting question, because I think it's less of a question of what impact they had on the music scene. I mean, you could definitely get into the musicological questions of what they mean for Canadian patriotism or the Canadian music industry, seeing as how they never broke in the United States. But what you're seeing this morning is on our program, on the Radio 2 morning program, we set up our Facebook wall as a way to get messages to Gord. We're going to take all the messages and pass them on to him. I want to let you know about that. That's at facebook.com/CBC Music. And what I'm really seeing is people writing in very personal stories. I'm not going to read too many of them, but really personal stories of what he meant to them. I think that was almost the Tragically Hip's greater legacy, was not necessarily what they meant to the Canadian music industry. And there's no doubt that they're one of the most important Canadian bands of all time, and they sang our stories and told our stories at a time where Canadian bands weren't necessarily telling our stories. But if you don't mind, I have one.
Go for it. I'd love to hear them.
In addition, people have said they got engaged at Tragically Hip concerts. People have said they met the man of their dreams at a Tragically Hip concert. But someone wrote this, and I thought it was really beautiful. Every single day, at least one thing happens in my life that reminds me of a Hip lyric, and then that song plays in full in my head, and my day is better. This band and Gord's lyrics specifically have connected with me at a level I have never experienced music do before. I hope it will happen since I'll see them on tour. That's a fellow named Brendan Somerhalder on Facebook, and I think that's the narrative that's really coming across this morning. Is certainly you can talk sort of historically and musicologically about the impact of the Tragically Hip, but the really impact was on the people that listened to them.
Yeah, and we should stop talking the past tense. It's one thing we should say, because this is a band that's going to go out on tour. They say he's feeling well enough to go and do this. The music continues at this point.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that in the long history of the Grateful Dead, of the Tragically Hip, you think of them as one of these great iconic bands, but really what's a testament to their power and their dedication is that as soon as they announced this morning, it was almost more of a tour announcement. It was, hey, this is what's happening with Gord, and seeing as how we're all in this together, we're going to come out and find you, and we're going to come out and get to hang out and spend some time together.
We have a caller, Jim from Newfoundland joins us on the line. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm okay. Share your thoughts today on this news.
I'm stunned. I mean, I woke up this morning because my other hero's 75th birthday's today, but I'm just in shock, really. I'm 50 years old, and I saw them first at Maple Leaf Gardens in the Fully Completely tour, and I've seen them 6 or 7 times since. My family, my kids. I'm talking to my daughter now, and she's upset as well. And it's hard to put into words. You know, when music is a part of your life, like it is mine and many, many others, and you have this person that writes these words and sings these songs and performs these songs the way he has done for the past 30 years, they become a part of your life. And then, you know, to wake up this morning, it's just devastating.
Jim, you know, I think so many people are feeling that exact same way this morning. That his music wasn't just a song, wasn't just songs you enjoyed singing. It really became a soundtrack to your life. His songs are and continue to be a soundtrack to your life. He was a wonderful performer, and he is a wonderful performer. He continues to be so generous to up and coming musicians. I know, being from Newfoundland, there's a great story about when they played at Memorial Stadium in St. John's, and the Newfoundlanders were not crazy about the opening act, and they weren't giving them a whole lot of attention. And Gord is so supportive of Canadian musicians, and he walked out on stage and he said, "If you don't listen to this band, if you don't give this band some time, we're not going to get on stage and perform. We're not going to do this." And I totally understand your point, Jim. He is, and he continues to be one of the most vital of the Canadian songwriters.
Jim, thank you.
Not only that, but just before I go, like, if you can name the best-selling book of poetry in Canada, it's Coke Machine Glow. The guy was multifaceted. He was more than anything you thought he was.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing that memory.
Thanks.
Okay, and I wanted to say, you know, it's interesting, poetry, because besides being a poet himself, Gord talks about how much he loves poetry and that his inspirations come from people like Irving Layton and Al Purdy. So, you know, it's a part of a tradition of poetry among great Canadian writers.
Well, there is a certain abstract poignancy, which I like to describe Gord Downie's music as having, which is sometimes his music can be, when you actually read them out, you can find yourself going, what in the name of God is he talking about? But when he sings them, they still mean so much to you, and you can find so much meaning, like the greatest Canadian poets, you can find so much meaning in his words.
I've got a tweet from Paul McKeever, who says, "My buddy handed me a mixtape that introduced me to the hip on the night I announced my engagement." So some of those lovely life moments where someone's music is connected to something in your own life.
At the Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Festival, this is how much people feel a connection to Gord Downie. Is after the show was over, I said, "Gord, do you want to go out now?" And there's some people there waiting for you. And Gord said, "What do you think, Tom? Do you think I should do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I think you should." And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." And so we walk out, and there's about 50 or 60 people outside the festival gates, waited all night and to meet him. And I tell you, about 2 or 3 of them had hockey helmets. They wanted him to be a part of, you know, their game. They want, you know, his songs about hockey, his songs about the Canadian life really do speak to them, and they continue to speak to them. And he took time and spent 5-10 minutes with every single person, even though it took all night, and a very generous person. And again, that lack of distance between performer and audience is what makes the Tragically Hip so great, and I know they're going to continue to do that on this upcoming tour, and I can't wait.
Now, so if you want to talk to us, 416-205-5800. Our next caller is Hunter. Hello, Hunter. What do you want to say today about Gord Downie and the hip?
Well, good morning. I wish I was calling on better merits. I was just even listening to the last caller. I was getting a little emotional just thinking about it. Like, just the news of it itself, it's so shocking. But you know, I'm a third-year college student. I'm still in my early 20s, and my parents raised me on the hip. I remember my father putting on 50th Mission cap before I'd go to my hockey games just to try and get me motivated. But yeah, I'm sure all the callers and tweeters will be sharing stories, so I'll share my one hip concert moment. I remember in November 2004, the team was playing. I remember the band, was playing at the John Labatt Center. If you remember, the London Knights were on that undefeated run that year with like Corey Perry and Brandon Pruitt and a lot of great players. Anyway, that night they were on a road game, and in the middle of the concert, it seemed like they were just fixing guitars or something, and Gord was kind of just walking around making faces at the crowd. And then someone walked from the back and whispered in his ear, and then he just looked up, and looked at the crowd and said, "Knights won." And it was just such a simple moment where the crowd goes nuts and everyone's going crazy, and then he goes, "Twist my arm," and then they play the next song, and you're just so hyped up from a moment like that he could just have a grip on a crowd so easily. And it was just a moment where you really got to appreciate how much of an impact they had on Canadiana in the whole.
Yeah, he's the best, man. He's the best. You go to see him, and he starts saying maybe 2 or 3 phrases, and you're going, "What in the name of God is he talking about right now?" And then 2 or 1 album later, you find out those 2 phrases he said on stage have turned into another song. That's an excellent story, man. Thanks for sharing it.
Awesome, no problem, guys. Hope enjoy your day.
Oh, thanks very much. It's a difficult day to sort of digest this news, but as we keep saying, this is a band that continues to play, is going out on tour. I would say it reminded me of when Paul Quarrington was ill, continued to perform, and said, my life goes on right now. And, we saw that with David Bowie performing some seminal music, writing these profound songs through a period of illness. And I think you're looking forward to the concert. What are you hoping to see and hear?
I mean, I think it's going to be a celebration, and I hope it certainly is a celebration. Again, not to overstate it, but I think it's going to seem less like a band is getting up and performing for the audience, and more like the audience gets to spend time with their favorite band and spend time together. So I know the tickets are going to go so fast. I'm so pleased that the band is going on tour, and I think so many Tragically Hip fans across the country, while reeling this morning, are looking forward to spending some time with the band.